so that we like to have a copy of this on our YouTube channel so that we don't have to do this next time. So I'm going to mute myself. And like always, if you can't hear me or if anything gets jacked up, please text me or something, because
I will.
I'm going to zone out and work over here.
We shouldn't get interrupted. We threw the puppy upstairs with Max, so it'll be easier. All right. Here it goes. You guys write questions down if you have any questions, because we're going to go, we'll take a 5-minute break when this is done, and then we'll go right into the class. So and we're going to talk about negotiation. Okay, here we go.
Welcome to Module 5, the 7 Essentials of Negotiation. Before we get to the good stuff today, how did you do with Module 4's action steps? Are you tracking your activities? Now at this point, you may be a little busier due to your great efforts of contact and care with your database. And if this is you, congratulations. If not, it's okay. Stay the course, continue the activities, and if you need to, reset and up your game. If you are having trouble getting to those action steps, I encourage you to carve out specific times in your day where you're going to focus on the activities with no distractions. Now that means that your weapon of mass distraction needs to be put on airplane mode for 45 to 60 minutes minimum while you connect with your clients. Try it. It'll change your world, and you'll get a whole lot done in a short amount of time. All right, let's get to our great topic today. Now, the skill of negotiation is by far the most necessary and most referable trait a professional agent can have in today's marketplace. And Brian Buffini is the ultimate negotiator. This module alone is worth the price of admission on the pathway to mastery. Welcome to Module 5, the 7 Essentials of Negotiation.
Welcome to Module 5. The 7 Essentials of Negotiation. You know, there is no skill in your business more important than negotiation. Many times the difference between closing the transaction and not is your ability to negotiate. Many people are intimidated and fearful in negotiations. So when you're a true professional in this area, you stand out above your competition and you give your customers something to hang their hat on when they tell their friends about you. Today we're going to cover the 7 essentials of negotiation. Now, I'm constantly studying and researching this subject, and I've read dozens of books on negotiation. One of my all-time favorite negotiators was James B. Donovan. Now, that name probably doesn't ring a bell. However, he was portrayed in the movie Bridge of Spies by Tom Hanks. This is a man who negotiated a prisoner exchange with both the Russians and the East Germans, and he got 2 American prisoners released and only gave up 1. Now, he was later asked to negotiate the release of prisoners from Cuba following the Bay of Pigs, and was asked to retrieve 1,113 prisoners. He ended up getting, well, you hear this, 9,703 men, women, and children released. Now, that's a master negotiator. So this is my man right here, James B. Donovan. He doesn't look at all like Tom Hanks. And this is a neat book. It's the life and career of James B. Donovan. I've read, this year alone, over 11 books. I'm on my 12th right now on negotiation. I would say that it's probably the strongest skill in my repertoire as a real estate agent. But I will tell you that when you've committed to the pathway to master something, you're always interested, you're always growing, and you're always seeing how you can get better. Here's what I can tell you. I'm really good at this. I don't think I'd have gotten 9,700 men, women, and children. Does that make sense? So I'm going to read the guy, I'm going to study the guy that's sharing that stuff with me. Does that make sense? So let's begin at our most basic level, and we're going to start with the definition. And Webster always takes us back to the fundamentals, okay? So here we go. Fill this in, please. It's a discussion aimed at reaching a mutual agreement. It's a discussion aimed at reaching a mutual agreement. So many people, when they negotiate, I win, you lose. Now, it doesn't mean that there aren't people who do better than others, okay? James Donovan, he got 2 American prisoners and gave up 1 Russian prisoner. So you could say he got the better end of the deal, but the Russians still got their man, by the way. It's a mutual agreement, okay? There's 7 essentials we're going to cover. Here they are. Number 1, be prepared. Just like the Boy Scouts. Be prepared. Number 2, find common ground. Number 3, don't take it personally. Think of Michael Corleone. It's just business. It's just business, okay? Number 4, don't try to prove someone wrong. Don't try to prove someone wrong. You got to keep that ego in check. Number 5, keep the mo going. I'll explain what that means. Momentum, mo money. That's what we want to do. Number 6, be willing to walk away. And number 7, everybody wins. Everybody wins. So we're going to cover 7 essentials to negotiation. It's going to be a full tilt. Take lots of notes. Follow along. I'll tell a few stories along the way to bring this stuff to life, okay? So, first major point, be prepared. Where do you start with that? Do your research. Do your research. You want to be a great negotiator? Don't rely on your skills, your charm, or the gift of gab that you have. Do your research. Thomas Edison said this, a genius is a talented person who does his homework. A talented person who does his homework. Now, people call Edison a genius, and rightly so. Hundreds and hundreds of patents still in his name today. But he was a person who did his homework. Does that make sense? So be prepared. Next, know your facts. Know your facts. If someone brings up a true fact in a negotiation that you are not aware of, you are at a disadvantage, and you deserve to be at a disadvantage. There are many times when I was able to put the other agent back on their heels because they didn't know their facts. They didn't know how a process worked. They didn't know the way it was going to go through underwriting. They didn't know what the points and fees were. They didn't know their facts. The fewer the facts, the stronger the opinion. What a great quote that is. And what we want to do is have great factual negotiations, principle-based negotiations, and the least amount of emotionalism as possible. The fewer the facts, the stronger the opinions. Another part about being prepared is you got to analyze the situation. You got to analyze what's going on. Check the lay of the land, if you will. Marilyn Vos Savant, the highest IQ in the world, says be able to analyze statistics, which can be used to support or undercut almost any argument. Analyze statistics, which can be used to support or undercut almost any argument. Let me give you an example of a situation where a negotiator did not analyze the situation. A number of years ago, my family, we lost our home to a fire. And 6 young kids at the time, Beverly homeschooled at the time, so it was not just a house, but a school. We lost everything we owned. We made it out with the shirts on our back and 1 car. So here's a picture of the house after the fire. 2 brand new Mercs sitting in the parking lot, okay? So when you go through something like this, and many of you have endured things much more difficult than this, you end up making a list of all the things you got to do. You got birth certs and passports and this and that. You start making your list. And it took us weeks and weeks to make a list of about 750 items. That took more than 18 months to get done, by the way. So one of the items on my list was buy cars. My wife and I, there's our cars, okay? We need cars. So I go down to the dealership to go buy the same cars I had before, okay? A couple of nice Mercedes. The salesman who I bought the cars from was no longer there. So I walk in. Now I have about a dozen items to get done on my list that day, and buying cars was not the most important. Did you guys hear what I just said? Yeah. So I'm under pressure in a lot of ways. I got an event I got to go to Toronto for. I got to get a passport, and I had to get a passport in 3 days. I had to buy suits and shirts and this and that and the other. Otherwise, I'm showing up butt naked in Toronto. That's a pretty open-minded society, but they're not that open-minded. You follow me? So I drive. I go, hey, I'm talking to the sales manager. Is my guy here? No, but I have Charlie. He can help you. So I sit down with Charlie. Charlie, great. Here's what I had. You know the recent fires. We just lost both cars. My wife had the silver one, and I had the darker one. That was the AMG. Boom. Okay, I need to get 2 cars. Now, Charlie works in a very high-end business, and he has, this is why I talk about dialogues versus script. He has a scripted approach. He's like, okay, Mr. Feeney, tell me about your needs. No, 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 oh, no, no, oh, no, oh, no, 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 no. No, I appreciate you trying to serve me, but I need 2 cars, and I want to get out of here as quick as I can. In fact, I got to get out here in about 50 minutes, okay? I need 2 cars. Oh, no, well, no, Mr. Feeney. In fact, there's been a lot of upgrades. 4 months ago, I bought these cars 4 months. No, no, there's been a lot of upgrades we've made to the AMG and this and that. In fact, I have a video I want to show you. So now he wants to take me in the room to watch. How long is this video? That's about 12 minutes. You're going to love this. It's going to make you feel great about it. I go, dude, I'm buying 2 cars today. I might end up buying 2 tractors if I have to, but I'm buying 2 cars. I couldn't shake him. I couldn't shake. He turned into the sales prevention team. He couldn't find a way to take my money quickly. In my case, great service meant do it fast, if you analyze the situation. In somebody's case, it might, okay, I'll take 3 months with you. In my case, I have dozens of items. I got to get a passport. I got to go down to the passport office. I got to get suits and shirts. I got to get to go to Canada. 3 days, I got to get a passport. I got a bunch of stuff to do. I need 2 bleeding cars. Wouldn't let me do it. $250,000 worth of cars that I did not buy from him that day, because he didn't analyze the situation. That's an example of being prepared. And sometimes someone needs to go quick. Sometimes someone needs to go slow. Sometimes you need to really meet people where they are and where they're at. Does that make sense? Yeah. All right, let's take a look at the next one. Second major principle, find common ground. Who are the negotiating parties? You got to find common ground. You have to find out who's at the dance. So you might be representing a seller. There's a buyer. Okay, so who are the negotiating parties? Is there a third party involved? Is there a co-signer on the loan? Is there a family member or an heir? Is there an attorney involved? Okay, who's given advice? Is there another agent on the deal? Oh, by the way, here's a principle I have. Again, I'm sharing because I'm challenging people to be successful. But I believe if you have a willing buyer and a willing seller, and the deal doesn't happen, 95% of the time it's because of the agents. You willing buyer, willing seller, the property appraises, okay, unless there's something technical goes through, the person wasn't qualified, so on and so forth, and if the person wasn't qualified, that's on the agent too. But I want to share with you, in many cases, I had a strategy to represent my client, and then I came up with a strategy to how do I deal with not only the seller or the buyer, but the other agent, the sales prevention team on occasion. Are you guys with me? Who are the negotiating parties? And the key is, how do you find common ground? How do you find common ground? Next, what's important to them? What's important to them? I know what's important to me. What's important to them? Okay? I'll tell you a little story. Lots of stories today. You're going to love it. Okay? So I'm representing a gal. She's a single mom. She's got an 8-year-old daughter. She saved up her money, and she's buying her first home. And she's buying in an area called Poway. Now, Poway, at the time, was a mixture of large homes, kind of custom homes on large lots, and kind of open farmland. And bit by bit, as you can imagine, over the years, that farmland has all turned into large homes on large estates. Make sense? So it's kind of, it was a neighborhood in transition to becoming a higher-end neighborhood. So a lot of people were selling their houses. Investors would come in, knock them down, and build like a 10,000 square foot house on the lot. My gal finds this house, falls in love with it. It was an old house on a big lot in Poway. And it was on the market for $150,000. So now I'm dating myself, okay? Now, we're up against a full price offer from an investor. And we get in the bidding, and he goes up $8,000 and she's maxed. So he just goes up $8,000. So they took us in backup position. So he is $8,000 more. He's going to close in 15 days. But for some reason, he was planning on knocking down the house. For some reason, he wanted a termite inspection. Okay? Now, I'm not sure what that was. I think it was actually a negotiating ploy. So we're in backup position. We ask the other agent, can we come and see the home? So we see the home. The guy that owned the house was a retiring postal worker. Big, long beard, been in the Postal Service for almost 40 years. He was leaving San Diego to go to Missouri. He wanted to be able to hunt off his porch. That was his thing. He said he wanted to sit on a chair, put the gun up on the rail, and shoot something while on his porch, okay? Good old boy. My gal's walking through the house with me, and he's home. And she sees these rose bushes, and she starts doting over these rose bushes. Oh my gosh. Next thing you know, he comes out. And he was a pipe smoker, okay? And he's there, and he goes, oh, those came from my grandmother. He goes, I'll plan on taking a piece of those with me to Missouri. I'm going to bring Grandma with me, okay? And she goes, oh, those are so nice. And she apparently was really into gardening, and she knew the types. And I'm just sitting back and knowing what's happening, okay? That they're connecting and enjoying whatever else. Well, all of a sudden, up comes a sports car, kind of comes in there. I mean, literally like a scene from a movie. Car comes up. He screeches in. There's dust on the dusty road. He gets out. He's got the slick back hair. He walks in. He's got the realtor with him. And they both look like they're out of Wall Street. And he's walking around, and he's got the plans putting out on the hood of the car. We're going to do this. We're going to tear those trees right there. We'll bring it in. We'll have the guest house there, this and that and the other. So they're walking around. The guy with the pipe, U.S. Postal Service, says, why is he tenting the house? And he goes, it's just something he always does on every one of his properties. But don't worry, he's going to build something beautiful here. You'll come back and see it. You'll be real proud of it someday. So the other agent's doing a good job trying to keep the seller happy. And he goes, when they tent the house, will they cover these rose bushes? And the agent goes, yeah, probably not going to be able to save them. And the investor goes, no big deal to me. Next thing you know, we have a seller who refuses to sell his house. I'm talking about willing to go to a lawsuit. I'm not selling my house to that blankety blank blank. We end up, after a whole bunch of shenanigans, end up buying that house for $8,000 less to my gal, who had to go through all kinds of rigmarole because she wasn't putting a ton down, and the guy had to do all kinds of little extras to his house because she was planning on living in the house. Because what was important to him? His rose bushes. And you never know what's important. And as an agent, I learned very early on not to tell somebody what I thought was important. I've seen agents do this, walking through a house and go, oh my gosh, this porch just kills me. And all of a sudden the buyer gets real quiet. Why? Because that porch reminds them of their grandma's house. Don't tell someone what's important to them. Discover what's important to them. Does that make sense? Madeleine Albright was a Secretary of State for the United States, a brilliant negotiator, and here's what she says. I do believe that in order to be a successful negotiator, you have to be able to put yourself in the other person's shoes. Unless you can understand what is motivating them, you're never going to be able to figure out how to solve a particular problem. And that's where the creativity of negotiation comes in. We're here to solve problems and find these mutual agreements. Does that make sense? Yeah. Next, once you've done that, you want to align interests. You're finding this common ground, you want to align interests. Okay? So who are the negotiating parties? What's important to them? And then you want to align interests. So you put it all in line. He wants to move to Missouri. She wants the rose bushes. We're aligning those interests. Does that make sense? Okay? Here's James Garfield said this: commerce links all mankind in one common brotherhood of mutual dependence and interests. We're trying to find this mutual agreement. Not I win, you lose. I overpower you, you lose. Again, it's the restraint of that that makes you a great negotiator. Does that make sense? Yeah. All right. Here's the third one. Don't take it personally. Don't take, this is strictly business. This isn't personal. This is just business, sonny. Okay? The Godfather. Strictly business. You've got to keep it strictly business. So here's a principle, a great little phrase I want you to remember. Be the rock, not the river. Be the rock, not the river. Don't get jacked up emotionally. By the way, is it okay for a seller to be emotional, yes or no? What do you think? Yes. Is it okay for a buyer to be emotional? Yes. Yeah, sure it is. Buying a home, moving, is a very emotional thing to do. In all the surveys, it's in the top 5 most stressful things a person does in their life. So it's okay. I tell couples all the time when I be representing them, hey, you might find yourself being a little testy with one another right now. Just lots of deep breaths and understand you're under pressure. You'll find yourself being anxious right now as a buyer. It's okay. That's what you have me for. I'm the rock. The river means we go with the flow. What do most agents do? They get fritzed out. You'll hear these words: my seller, my buyer. You can be an advocate for your customer without being an adversary. So you got to be chill. You got to allow them to be emotional. You got to be the rock. And oh, by the way, if you get emotional, they'll view it as empathy at the beginning. They'll view it as weakness at the end. They won't trust you. They won't refer you. They want you to be impartial. What if you went to a surgeon? What if you have a serious injury, a serious problem, you need surgery, and you went to a surgeon? Oh my God, there's blood. You are sick. You are so sick. Oh my God. You might not live. You might not make it. Now, on one hand, you want a surgeon who would have some empathy, but I'll take the dude that doesn't have an ounce of blood in his veins. Okay? You're sick, let me fix you. I will be quite precise, and you will get well, and we will never see each other again. Fine. Now, if he has a bit of personality and I like him, I'd tell my friends about him. Are you guys with me? Yes. Be the rock, not the river. Don't get carried away. If you can keep your head when all about are losing theirs and blaming it on you. Good old Rudyard Kipling. Don't take it personally. Be an advocate, not an adversary. I mentioned it earlier. Be an advocate. I advocate for my clients. I fight for my clients without fighting. I champion their cause. I champion their cause. That's what you need. You need to let them know that. Oh, by the way, one of the best relationships I've developed in my real estate career was not just with my customers, it was fellow agents. Years and years later, when I did my first seminar in San Diego, it was February 14th, 1996, called it the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. And I put on a seminar, the first seminar I ever did. The room was filled with hundreds and hundreds of agents I'd done transactions with. I used to call them cooperating agents. One of the people who got a personal note from me every time was the cooperating agent. If I represent a seller and an agent brought in a buyer and sent me an offer, the first thing I do is thank them for the offer, whether the offer went through or not. I thank them and tell them, just so you know, it was great working with a pro like you during this transaction. Let's do this again. I built relationships. There were times years later when I was in a tight market and I'd be representing a buyer and there might be a stronger offer from a different buyer, but the agent on the other side had done transactions with me before and they'd say, listen, this guy's a pro, he's going to get it closed. I don't know about this other offer. I don't know if this is going to go through. You need to leave town. Let's go with the sure thing. And sometimes my clients weren't able to match the other person's offer, but we got the deal. Are you guys hearing me? Yeah. And that pro did their client a service because they said, this guy's a sure thing. So be an advocate, not an adversary. The English proverb that says, you'll catch more flies with a spoonful of honey than a gallon of vinegar. There's a lot of gallon of vinegar agents out there, okay? Look like they sucked a bag of bad lemons. Don't take it personally. Next, minimize emotions. Minimize emotions. Have you ever gotten the panic call from the cooperating agent right at the end of the transaction? You ever had that call? You know the number and you go, oh, this isn't going to be good. Hey, how you doing? Oh my God! The fence fell down, the fence fell down. Sorry? There was a storm last night, the fence fell down, the fence fell down. I called the seller. I got a contractor over there, it's going to cost $3,000. I told him I'd give up $1,500 of my commission. Will you kick in the other $1,500? I'm sorry, you must have the wrong number. Here's the thing. Your fence didn't fall down. My fence didn't fall down. Somebody's fence fell down because there was a storm. It's called life. But what happens is people negotiate from their need. They negotiate from their need. That agent probably desperately needs that commission. And I feel bad for that person, but here's the problem. And this is where it's not about having, oh, Brian, you have money and they... Here's what happened. I've been doing this for years. I've been faithful for years. I wrote personal notes when I didn't feel like doing it. I went and did Popeyes when I didn't feel like doing it. I worked for years doing this and this and this to put myself in a position to represent really good people in a really good situation. And now an agent who hasn't done this is going to dictate to me my living and how much I make as a professional because they have one lead. They have one transaction. and a circumstance came up and they're not skilled enough to be able to handle it. So what would happen when an agent did that? Sorry, don't volunteer my commission. My fence didn't fall down last night, your sellers did. Why don't you go back to them and see what their plans are to rectify the situation, and I'll see if what their plan is meets with what my buyer wants. And I'll be happy to represent that information to my customer. Are you guys with me? Yes. Okay? We got to minimize emotions. We got to minimize emotions. And oh, by the way, sometimes the agent went back and the seller was kind of reasonable after they got over the emotion. Why? Because the agent got emotional, because the client got emotional. All of a sudden somebody realizes my bloody fence fell down. I might need to fix it. It's unfortunate, but it's a part of life. Does that make sense? Yeah. Ernest Hemingway said this: courage is grace under pressure. Courage is grace under pressure. I always wanted to be gracious. I always wanted to be fair to all the parties involved. I didn't feel the need to let everybody know I won, but I also will let you know that I had a backbone. Okay? Here's the next piece to the puzzle. Don't try to prove someone wrong. Don't try to prove someone wrong, which is there are always points of debate, and there are also ways to look at things. For example, if you're representing a seller and something needs to be fixed up on a home, the seller goes, that's patched up, it's fine. The buyer looks at it and goes, that's a mess. A seller fixes up something. Why? They're trying to do it as inexpensively as possible. The buyer wants it fixed up in a way, I plan to live here. Okay? Now, there's a fact somewhere in the middle there, but there's a heck of a lot of perspectives in the middle of that. Does that make sense? Yeah. And how we approach it. So what we want to do is use language that makes people feel comfortable. We want to use language that makes people feel comfortable. Here's a bunch of words that over the years have helped me save transactions and have also helped me get referrals. Words like reasonable, fair. Yeah, that's standard. What do you mean they want a home warranty? You know, that's somewhat standard. There's a problem comes up. Well, let me double check. That's quite normal. I want to make sure you're comfortable with this down payment. I want to make sure you're comfortable with this arrangement. Here's my compensation, not commission. All right? That's minor. That's minor. That's not a major deal. That's a minor situation. We can handle that. Oh, that's quite common. And then we want to use we and us. Don't you feel a little more comfort in hearing those words? Yeah. As there's just no drama. People go, oh yeah. So what happens? The seller doesn't know. They asked us to fix our screen doors. There's nothing wrong with it's their home. It's their home. Of course they're upset. If someone walked into your house and go, oh, you got holes in your screens, man. Yeah, this door's not working. You know the bathroom doesn't fully flush. Did you notice that? You want to check that out. If someone walks through your house, you can get the heck out of here. You take it personally. Is that true? Yeah. If a buyer walks through your home, that's their job. They hire a contractor to find that stuff. Are you guys with me? Yes. So, hey, this is normal. Yeah, that sounds fair. That's a minor repair. Okay? That's a reasonable request. I can't believe it. There's nothing wrong with my fridge. Why do they need a warranty on my fridge? Okay? And that's what happens. And then the agent tries to show I'm representing you, and then they get out of whack. Are you guys with me? Yeah. Be the rock, not the river. Okay? Next, allow people to save face. Again, there's lots of circumstances why that happens. I will also tell you, I learned this where back in the mid-90s, all of a sudden, this is when we really started to see the influx of overseas buyers, okay, which is, 10% of the market today. And I had investors coming from East Asia, and I had to learn. Save face begins at every step along the way. It was a cultural thing I had to learn. So, for example, I'd be in a meeting, and there'd be these three gentlemen, and they'd hand me their business card. And I'd hand them my business card. Hey, in America, you get a business card. You okay, great, pick your teeth with it, whatever else. And no, this is a big deal. I hand the business card to these gentlemen. They each look at it, and they look up at me, and they read it, and they look up at me. And so I'm no dummy, okay? When you're an immigrant, you learn fast. So I pick up each business card, and I read it, and I look at them. And the minute I did that, and I learned something that day. Okay, there's a cultural respect here that needs to honor the individual. And I learned that, and I said, I wonder what that looks like in a negotiation. And I realized that people need to save face in a negotiation. Somebody has to give up something in a negotiation. Somebody has to compromise in a negotiation. You want to make sure the person saves face. Does that make sense? Okay? So always allow people to save face. The easiest way to save face is to shut the lower half. Let me tell you that. That's right? So you want to keep that lower half shut a lot of times. That's one of the ways you let people save face. Here's the last one. Know when you've won. You can tell a lot of this is where I'm really trying to take the emotion out of this situation and be a professional and have a professional approach, okay? The Grand Master of Taekwondo, the ultimate black belt, said, in victory be humble, in defeat be strong, in all things be fair. That's the master of masters at his profession, okay? He's gone as far as you can possibly go in the history of his craft. In victory be humble, in defeat be strong, in all things be fair. I'll bet he's a pretty good negotiator, don't you? Here's the next thing. Number 5, keep the mo going. What does the mo stand for? What do you think it means? What do you think? Momentum. Momentum is key. Let me give you this principle. Write this one down. A stalled deal is a dead deal. A stalled deal is a dead deal. Great Harvey Mackay, good friend of mine, he wrote How to Swim with the Sharks Without Being Eaten Alive. Beware the bare-chested man that offers you his shirt. Best friends with Lou Holtz, just built a relationship with this guy over the years, great guy. And he says this, as a salesperson, you will be judged by your ability to keep a stalled conversation moving along briskly. Now, I'm not talking about the rhythm of a negotiation because sometimes people are more methodical than others. But listen, there needs to be some kind of progress. Here's why. When people go to make these big purchases, these big decisions, it's very emotional. And you have to kind of, okay, we're going to go do this. They're saying prayers over it. They're talking to their family members about it. They're up at night thinking about it. And it's a big deal. It's a big commitment. You're going to sign the line that is dotted. And you get your emotions up, and then you hear nothing, and hear nothing, and hear nothing, and hear nothing. Those emotions start to wane. And then here's what happens. Someone goes in a negotiation, I'm just tired of dealing with this. And you go, well, we're so close. What's wrong with you? What's wrong is that you didn't keep the mo going. Great. Seller's out of town for the next 4 days. That's going to feel like an eternity. Now, I'm going to keep in constant contact with this other agent and find out what their frame of reference is. But just so you know, they're out of town for a few days, okay? Sometimes I purchased a building from a U.S. congressman. And let's just say he had a slightly large ego. And so he would blow off all the time frames on when he was supposed to get back to me. I had to negotiate with myself. Are you guys with me? Yeah. I had to keep myself because this was a big deal. It was a move for our company. It was a 100,000 square foot building. I had all this negotiation to do. I'm moving hundreds of employees. I had 400 employees at the time. We're trying to move, and there was a lot on the line. And this guy, I had to keep going. So I finally called his agent and said, okay, this is a big building with a big old commission. I need to get some info. Throw me a bone here, people. I need to know what's going on. Okay, you know what? He's in Japan. He's going from here to here. I just called to him. And all of a sudden, I'm able to calm down. Does that make sense? We got to keep the momentum going. Next, here's a great rule of thumb for you. Cut time frames in half. Now, here's an example of a negotiation. Someone talks to you. You go over on a listing appointment, and they say, great. This all sounds good. We're going to talk about it. We're going to pray about it. We're going to take our time. We're thinking about putting our home on the market maybe 5 months from now. Have you guys ever had that? Yeah. Okay, happens all the time. I'm going to give you a rule of thumb. Cut the time frames in half. At the very least, when someone says we're going to put our house on the market in 3 months, I'm calling them in 30 days. Why? Because the minute they verbalize that out of their mouth, I'm going to put my house on the market in 90 days, they're now thinking about it. It's not that they just didn't know. They do this every 7 or 5 years. They don't know. So when they say 90 days, it's giving them a little breathing room. It's taking the pressure off. But all of a sudden, they're thinking about it every day. This has happened to you. You drove along a street. You went on that listing appointment. They said they weren't putting it on the market for 6 months. Cut those time frames in half. Okay? You want to keep the momentum going. There's negotiations in lead conversion. There's negotiations in the offer process. And then there's negotiations in the transactional process. There's negotiations all the time. Does that make sense? Keep the momentum going or the deal will stall. Lastly, you got to know when to fold them. Sometimes someone is going to burn out your customer because they're so slow, so methodical, and so unresponsive. Kenny Rogers, you got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them. Look, this is great advice. Know when to walk away, know when to run. You never count your commissions when you're sitting at the table. There'll be time enough for counting when the deal is done. Words to live by. Words to live by, some good negotiation. Sometimes you just got to fold up tent and say, we got to, that's why I never let my clients fall in love with the property until it's theirs. Does that make sense? Here's another very, very big one, probably the most significant tool in my arsenal, and I'll be candid with you. And again, I hope it's not coming off obnoxious here. I'm 30 years at this. I've told you my story where I began. I told you my story, that I didn't know anything. I went on my first appointments. I'm an immigrant. I don't know the lay of the land. I didn't know the business. I made so many mistakes along the way. But you need to understand, I mean, one of the reasons I'm teaching this course is I got pretty good at this stuff. Okay? Otherwise, you shouldn't be listening to me. And I will say to you, my customers, when I ask my best customers, when you refer me, what do you say? I provided all these services and all these cool things that I do, and the client parties and the pop-bys. I used to have a room in my office. I had an office building that was set aside for a daycare. So if I was showing a mom during the week, I had one of my staff trained as a licensed daycare person so that they could leave the kids with one of my assistants, and I'd go show mom houses. I mean, I did all kinds of cool things. I produced that old referral directory, I was Angie's List before Angie. So in San Diego, if you were fixing a house or needed a car detailed or whatever professional service you needed, I used to produce this beautiful book. So I would do all these things. But when I sat down with my customers and I said, when you refer me, I'd love to know, what do you say? How do you describe me? And the first 10 of my best advocates I ever took to lunch, 9 of them said, I always tell you, you're a great guy, you're this and you're very reliable, but you're a really good negotiator. Or you negotiated a great deal. Nowhere in any of my marketing did I have negotiation. Nowhere. Because I kind of knew how to do it. I worked at it. I didn't think it was a marketable quality until I realized this is how my clients describe me. Does this make sense? Yeah. The most powerful negotiating technique is the walk away. It takes chops, it takes guts, and most people are not willing to do it. And I'll share with you examples of this today, but you can't want the deal more than the other side. You want to be a negotiator, you cannot want the deal more than them. You have to maintain that professional posture. Ronald Reagan said this, it's being willing to walk away that gives you strength and power. If you're willing to accept the consequences of doing what you want to do. Now again, all the different political opinions, all I know is when Ronald Reagan was president, that Berlin Wall that had been up there for decades came down. Okay, and there was a series of hardcore negotiations that went on. Does that make sense? You have to be willing to walk away. So the next point in being prepared to walk away is point B, prepare your client to walk. This is so counterintuitive. Why? Because realtors make money when their deals stay together. Most realtors would be terrified to ever say to a client, hey, just so you know, we need to be prepared to walk away from this. Because buyers already are going to be skittish. They're going to have remorse. And so you don't want to be doing that. But by the way, when you're willing to say that, the clients are locked in more. Because they think they have to initiate their fear walking away. But I'm saying on behalf, I want to negotiate strongly on your behalf. We need to be prepared to walk away. You need to understand that just because we put an offer together, it doesn't mean that this home is sold. There's a lot of more negotiations to happen. And you have to be willing to walk away. If I'm talking to a buyer, I say to them, don't fall in love with this home till I hand you the keys, please. If you do, you'll take away my ability to negotiate strongly on your behalf. And there's a lot of negotiation to take place here. Just trust me in this process. The single most powerful tool for winning a negotiation is the ability to get up, walk away from the table without a deal. Okay? Here's the third part of this, point C. Don't make a threat you won't back up. So I'm prepared to walk away. My client, I prepare them to walk away. And then if you're gonna pull out that weapon, you got to be willing to use it. Does that make sense? Okay, so let me give you an example. The house that burned down I mentioned used to look like this, okay? It was a Georgia plantation style home, okay? had looked like no business being in Southern California. Looked like it belonged in the vines of Savannah. So when I first went to buy this home, the home itself had some uniqueness to it. It was on a fantastic lot, but it only had 3 bedrooms. It had 4 living rooms, but only 3 bedrooms. So it was also overbuilt. A movie producer had built this home. And so it was overbuilt for the neighborhood. Now, I wanted the lot. Little did I know I was going to end up with just the lot, but that's another story. God did a remodel for me, you know what I'm saying? But the house was overbuilt, and it had some functional obsolescence. I really wanted the home. My wife really wanted the home. The kids thought this yard was great, so I made an offer on the house. So I made a very solid offer on the house about what I was willing to pay for it. And the seller was having nothing to do with it. So he countered back at full price. And I had asked for this dining room table. There was this custom dining room table that had been built on property. So it was a 20-person dining room table built out of this beautiful mahogany. It was actually built on site. And so he said, in addition to the full price and changing the terms of what was the listing, he wanted 60 grand for the table. So I go, no problem. And I just said, yeah, no interest. She goes, do you want to counter at least? I go, no. She goes, well, at least counter something. I go, no, you had a chance to counter offer me. Your house was on the market for this. I made a very solid offer, you know, and it came back more expensive. You added 60 grand on for a table. Okay, it's not my kind of party. And I said, so I walked away. I loved the house. My wife loved the house. The kids loved the house. I walk away. I'm being my own agent. That doesn't mean that's not a struggle emotionally, but I'm being my own agent. So here's what happened. Now, obviously, I'm telling you the story because I won, right? 6 months later, I submitted the exact same offer. I made a point of it. All I did was, and again, back in the forms day, I had the existing form. I changed the dates, and I did it intentionally. I didn't start over. I just changed the dates, and I sent the same thing in, asking for the dining room table, the exact same offer. They send back a counter offer. Nope. I counter exactly the same. They send another counter offer. Exactly the same. So finally, the guy goes, okay, I'll sell you the house at your price, but you're not getting the table. I go, fine. Right? So he has to save face. He has to do it, right? I'd done the walk away. I got the exact same price, the terms I wanted. 7 days before closing, agent calls me. Hey, we're having trouble figuring out how to move that table. You know it was built on site. No, I didn't know that. She goes, would you be willing to pay, say, $30,000? Oh, no. You know, we made other arrangements. I said, but if you leave it there, I'll dispose of it for you. The walkaway. I can tell you, Buffini & Company is in 4 commercial buildings. All 4 buildings of our headquarters was a negotiation where I had to walk away. Now, I'm not just looking to do this to make a point or flex my muscles. It just means, and especially as you get to the higher average sales prices, you'll see this all the time. Does this make sense? And so you have to be willing to walk away. You have to prepare your client to walk away. And so you don't make a threat you won't follow through with. Does that make sense? You have to prepare your client. Sometimes your client's going to miss out on a property. And you have to prepare them for that. Just let them know, we're going to find something better. But under those terms, here's what I would always tell them. Every time you close the door, you'd have a bad taste in your mouth. Because you felt like we paid too much, we gave in. And that's the feeling you're going to have every single time you walk into this house. Does that make sense? Yes. So point number 7 is everybody wins. Everybody's got to win. So our first point in that, point A, constantly reinforce. Constantly reinforce. Just give you a principle. Every person on the face of the planet gets buyer's remorse in some regards. Because it's emotional. So you have to constantly reinforce. Don't ever presume. They seem like they're certain. They're a sophisticated buyer. Ever, ever, ever. Don't do it. My favorite author says this. People buy emotionally and justify logically. Guy's great, isn't he? Okay. I could listen to him all day. Next, bring perspective. Bring perspective. You got to keep bringing perspective. Sometimes you got to take people back to their goals. You got to take them back to what they've actually accomplished, where they're at. My goodness, remember when we started this process? You've done so well. Great stuff. And you say it before they're anxious. Does that make sense? Dan Brown, American author, said, sometimes all it takes is a tiny shift of perspective to see something familiar in a totally new light. That's what you need to do. And so you want to reassure people. You want to reassure them after they make the offer. You want to reassure them during the transaction. And you certainly want to reassure them even after the sale. The sale is made. When the transaction's open. Again, I'm going to tell you a great example. Here's was Buffini & Company's corporate headquarters for a number of years. It was on Armada Drive. This is a 100,000 square foot building. What you're looking at is those colors there. Those are flower fields, the famous flower fields of Carlsbad. What you'll see in the distance there is the Pacific Ocean. Almost all the offices in that building had an ocean view. So it's up on a hill, beautiful street, beautiful building surrounded by fabulous construction, flower fields in front, going cascading down, a little mall down below. All the staff could run down and get their lunch, and then ocean views all day long. Okay? Now, when the market changed, I needed to sell that building. So I needed to sell that building. We were in the teeth of the recession, and I had $20 million wrapped up in that building. I said, oh, you know what? I'd rather keep some of the employees and get rid of the building. That make sense? So here's what we did. We enter into a negotiation. Now, I want you to imagine this. It's a $20 million sale in the teeth of the recession, and I really need the money. We have a situation where the person who's buying the property represents a publicly traded company. So all they need is to print more stock to make 20 million bucks. You follow me? And so I'm dealing with the chief financial officer of a publicly traded company. But understand this, people buy emotionally and justify logically. They need constant reinforcement, constant assurance. Everybody, and I understand that. So I disciplined myself because this guy seemed like he was bullets. Okay? Yeah, okay, great. We picked up this property. We're picking up another one in Newport Beach. We're picking up another one here. Mr. CFO, swipe of the pen, $20 million. And that's the illusion it's easy to have. But I stayed disciplined. I said, everybody gets buyer's remorse. So I sent a version of this photograph to him. But I did it from the flower fields. So it's these are beautiful ranunculus, all tiered in different colors. And I take this photograph and it looks up and it looks like, sun is in the background. Then I do one and I had an aerial shot taken down with the ocean view. And I send these pictures. Unbeknownst to me, sometime later, my brother Dermot, who's our CEO, meets this guy on a golf course in La Costa. And the guy says, yeah, that's amazing. He says, you know, your brother sent me a couple of pictures. He goes, I'll be honest with you. We were having cold feet on that deal. We thought we'd made a poor decision. He said, I was meeting with our investors in New York, and I put those pictures into a slide presentation for our investors, and they just went bats over the property. They thought it was the most beautiful thing. Oh my gosh, we can't wait to come out to California. We can't wait to see those flower fields. You guys are working with the ocean view every day. We can bring some of our corporate clients through this. That's going to be our showcase property. They were about to walk from a deal that was a very big deal for me, a very big deal for Buffini & Company, by staying disciplined as a pro to doing the things I always did. Everybody has buyer's remorse. Does that make sense? Yes. So, what have we covered today? Quite a lot, right? Told you a lot of old-time stories. The older I get, the better I am. Today we covered the 7 essentials. 7 essentials. Now I'm excited to take you on the journey to advanced and legacy in negotiation. But I promise you this, it'll always be rooted in these 7 essentials. You got to get great at these. Does that make sense? Yes. You got to be prepared. Find common ground. Don't take it personally. Don't try to prove someone wrong. Keep that mo going. Be willing to walk away. And everybody's got to win. And if you follow the guidelines I've shared in this section, you're on your way to becoming not just a good negotiator, but a great negotiator. In today's tips and techniques, I'm going to share with you some winning words. Words that you use during the sales process, others that you use for the actual negotiation itself, and a completely different set of words for when you're serving your client during the actual transaction. So let's dive in. During the sales process, write these down. These are money makers right here. First, use investment instead of cost or price. Use investment instead of cost or price. The old Tom Hopkins dialogues, very powerful. Next, use let's put it in writing instead of sign the contract. Let's put it in writing. Now, even if you're doing it digitally, you're going to use the phrase, let's put it in writing. Okay? A contract sounds like a mafia hit. Sounds like a marriage contract. Not everyone's had a great deal with that particular contract. Next, use compensation instead of commission. People understand folks have to get compensated. Commission sounds kind of optional, doesn't it? Next, somebody asks for something you're not quite sure about. Let me double check. Let me double check. I want to know if they'll sell, if this will go with the house. Can you get that in the offer? Can you do this? Let me double check. Let me double check. Next, this is standard. So somebody, yeah, this is standard. You know, the commissions on a home is standard. We're gonna split escrow fees. This is standard. Okay, we're gonna have a split on the title fees. This is standard. Okay, we're gonna have a pay for a home warranty. This is standard. Okay, and so during the sales process itself, you got to use these words to bring things to life. Okay, now let's shift gears and talk about actually during the negotiation itself. Here's some winning words. The difference of the words we use will be the difference of the money we make. So here's the first. It's a fair offer. It's a fair offer. Now, if something's ridiculous, obviously it's not a fair offer. But if it's in the ballpark, if it's within 10, even 15% in some cases, it's a fair offer. All right? Next, this sounds reasonable. This sounds reasonable. It doesn't mean you're going to accept it, but this sounds reasonable. We're definitely getting close here. All right? Next, that's not unusual. That's not unusual. But Brian, they say they're not going to move out of their house until they find another home. You know, that's not unusual. Now, we're not going to make that an unlimited time frame here, but they need to find a place to live, and they haven't found it yet. And the reason they haven't found it yet is that they don't have their house under contract. So they say they want to give 45 days in the contract to give themselves a protection to find a home, or they want to rent back for 30 days. You know, it's not unusual. Okay. Next, I want to make sure you're comfortable. I want to make sure you're comfortable. I always want to do that. Are you comfortable in this situation? Somebody's making decisions. I want to make sure you're comfortable making this decision. And people just want to hear you say that. You're trying to make them comfortable in an uncomfortable circumstance. Buying and selling a home is uncomfortable. Negotiation is by its nature uncomfortable. You want to make them as comfortable as possible. I just want to make sure you're comfortable with this. Okay, next. During the actual transaction itself, you need a completely different set of words. This is where we got to be the comforter in chief. Does that make sense? So, listening to people while they're being anxious is a big deal. So here's the first phrase I'm going to give you. Winning words right here. I understand where you're coming from. I understand where you're coming from. In our advanced courses, we'll be sharing with you what we call our LIMS methodology. Listen, isolate, mirror, and solve. Okay? But we got to get this down first. So I understand where you're coming from. Here's another very, very powerful little choice of winning words while you're serving during a transaction. You're a high priority to me. So, for example, I would use that phrase when I had a person's house on the market and I'm checking in on my Friday calls. Just want you to know you're a high priority to me. Just so you know, getting your home sold is a high priority to me. You're a high priority to me. Somebody gives you a phone call, and you might be setting up times for you to return your phone calls at particular times. And when you do get back to them, yep, I want to get back to you. Just want you to know you're a high priority to me. Even if they had to wait a few hours for your return call. Sometimes it's, oh no, the fact that it was immediate means you're a high priority. That's not the case. They just need to know that. They just need to know that it's not like another day for you, that you're not just showing up. You're just rubber stamping this. You're building Ford motor cars. You're next, 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 next. I learned that early on as an agent when I had put how many homes I'd sold. I sold 52 homes my second year in real estate. And I went on an appointment, and this little old lady said to me, Brian, I've heard great things about you, but I'm very concerned. You sound like you're too busy for me. Why was I I sold 52 homes my second year in real estate? I was trying to show people I was good. I was trying to not puff up my ego, but hey, I'm good. I'm getting home sold. I'm a young guy. I was 23, 24 years of age. I sold 52 homes. That was kind of unique. But when I had this little old lady look me in the eye, she said, Brian, I saw this on all your materials. I think you're too busy for me. Okay. Let's change that one out. Okay. That was not a winning word. I needed those. She needed to know she was a high priority. Here's another one. So what I'm hearing you say is, now this is where you feed back to the person what they just said. Sometimes people will say things very emotionally to you. Sometimes another agent will say things. You go, okay, fine. Don't respond. You don't react. Don't get upset. Be the rock, not the river. And you go, so what I'm hearing you say is, and you feed back exactly. Don't interpret it. Feed back exactly what they said. And a lot of times, especially when a person's being emotional, they will re-edit their words. A lot of times you feed that back to them then. Because now you're seeking understanding. You're not trying to pin them as an accuser. You're feeding back to them. These are the words you're using. And so next thing you know, the second time, sometimes a person will ratchet it down again, and now you're getting to some mutual agreement. Does that make sense? Sometimes a person will say to you things, and you say, so what I'm hearing you say is, and they go, yes, that's what I'm saying. And they're being unreasonable, they're out of context, but they've had to hear it in their own words. Sometimes you're going to find out, and they're going to find out, that we're heading to a place that's not going to work. Does that make sense? And that's okay too. A couple more phrases I want to give you that are trained to all of our client care staff at Buffini & Company that have been part of my dialogue for decades in my real estate career go like this. First, let me see what I can do. Let me see what I can do. Let me see what I can do. You know, when you tell somebody, let me see what I can do, it's the perfect customer service word. Because it means, hey, I'm going to try and figure this out. I'm not just giving you no. There's nothing good. Hey, can you hear? No. I'm wondering if, no. I was thinking, no. And that's what a lot of us experience in customer service in our general business life. Is that true? Our customers don't come to us with a blank slate. They've had all these experiences, and they have these knee-jerk reactions too. They're expecting, many times, poor customer service. So when you say, let me see what I can do, you're also engaging the creative aspects of your brain to go to work to solve the problem. It also buys you time. Here's another very powerful set of winning words. I'll do my best. I'll do my best. I'll do my best. When you look at someone in the eye and say, I'll do my best, guess what you end up doing? You're doing your best. And if somebody says your best is not good enough, then fine. We're not a good fit. We're not a good fit. There have been times where I walked away from a transaction, during a transaction, by the way, because my client, under the gun, became a complete jackwagon. Okay? Jackwagon is a southern version of jackass from France. Okay? But if you do all the calls and the notes and the Popeyes, you've done your lead generation, you've earned the right. When you do your best, I'm interested in people I can have a relationship with. I'm interested in people who are coming on the journey for the long haul. I'm interested in staying in contact with the customer far more after the sale than I even was during. And so I want to build a relationship. I want them to refer me. I want to be their trusted advisor, no matter what. And so I do this, so on times when it's obvious, and I've used some winning words, and I've been the rock, not the river, and I've done all the things I'm supposed to do in negotiation, sometimes time to move on. Does that make sense? Yes. Let me tell you a little story to finish up here of a most difficult negotiation I was ever part of. Being in San Diego, sometimes we have some unusual characters I get a chance to represent. We have people who come from all over the world. I'm from Ireland, and so there's not a ton of people from San Diego who are born in San Diego. And so one of the parts of the culture I had to get used to was the whole surf culture. First of all, they speak a different language. Dude, gnarly, red. Okay, it's a whole different dialogue. So believe it or not, in Southern California, we have people who are professional surfers. And I got referred to this professional surfer, and he was a wonderful guy. About 25, 26 years of age, super talented. Apparently he was one of the best in the world. And he's referred to me to buy a home. And so I meet with him, and he's just the coolest kid I ever met. And so he finds out, we meet, and where do you want to live? And he wanted to live in this area called Bay Park. Bay Park is about a 7 or 8 minute shot straight from Pacific Beach. And it's up on a hill. You could see the water in the distance, and he wanted to go straight down the hill. He didn't want to turn left or right. When he got on this main road, he just wanted to go straight to the ocean. That was his thing. And he was the worst kind of buyer you can have. He liked everything I showed him. He had no opinions on anything. So he wants to live in this Bay Park area. We qualify him. At that time, he was about $300,000. And there was about 12 homes for sale in that area. So I show him the house. We go through the whole thing. I teach him how to, know what he's looking for. We go through the whole process. And so I walk through the house and I go, do you like it? Yeah. Could you see yourself living in here? Yeah, dude, no problem. Is this the one you'd like to make an offer on? Nah, not feeling it. Go to the next house. Do you like it? Yeah. Could you see yourself living here? Yeah, totally. Is this the one you'd like to make an offer on? Nah. This goes on and on and on and on to every single house I show them. Show them there's 12 homes in this area you qualify for. We've seen all 12. You like all 12. You don't want any 12. Yeah. So finally I got a call from another agent I'm working with in that area. She says, I got a listing coming up. Do you want to check it out? So I show them the house. And she had priced it. She had a kind of one-party listing, and it was priced decent. It kind of showed decent. If you were asking my opinion, of the 12 homes I showed them, it might have been in the top 5. So I walked through. Do you like it? Yeah. Could you see yourself living here? Yeah, totally. Is this the one you'd like to make an offer on? Yeah. Now, I want to ask him why, but I'm thinking I shouldn't ask him why. I should drive to the office and get him to sign right now. So we go back to the office. I'm walking through the process, the offer process, and he was ridiculous in the negotiation. I said, okay, they've asked for $290. Yeah, sounds like a good number. I said, well, why don't we start at around $275? No, man, I don't want to hassle the dude. I mean, no, this is how we're, no, dude, I'm good. He wants $290, good price. I saw the other houses. I'm fine. So now I feel like my negotiating weapons are not allowed to be used at all. So I write down the price. Okay, you want a home warranty? Oh, dude, I don't want to hassle the guy. No, we really should do, no, dude. I said, what about the washer and the dryer? No, I'm really not into washing and drying, dude. And it was like, this is the slam dunkiest offer I'm ever going to write in my life. But I also feel a little cheated because I'm like, I want to really go to bat for this kid. I really like this guy. I like being the hero, you know what I mean? And he's giving me nothing. So I'm going through it, and I go, so there's nothing you want, and so on and so forth, and whatever. He goes, yeah, there's one thing, man. I go, what? He goes, I want the dude's dog. Right. The dog that was in the backyard? He goes, yeah, Boogie. So apparently he'd been spending time with the dog while I was looking at the property. I go, oh, okay, what do you mean you want the dude's dog? He goes, yeah, I want him to sell me the dog. I go, man, I don't even know if that's legal. Like, I'm going to put that in a purchase agreement for real estate? Do we do a physical inspection on the dog? I mean, what do you do? Are we going to negotiate on the, you want me to put somebody's dog in the offer? I mean, why don't we just ask for one of the children while we're at it? But all of a sudden, right? And so I go, okay, and I'm going to bite my own tongue. I'm like, this was going so smooth, it was so easy, and now it's impossible. But I've gone back to, okay, you never know, and this and that and the other and whatever else. And I never forget it. And back in the day, you know, I have the purchase contract in my briefcase. I drive to the home. I call up the agent, and I go, I said, listen, my client, we looked at the house. He really kind of likes that house. I said, we're coming in with a full price, all cash offer. Close. I said, he wants almost nothing, almost nothing. I said, there is one circumstance that's a little unique that I need to go over with you. And I said, I'd like to talk this over with you, send over the offer, and then you could talk to your clients about it. And they go, what is it? So I explained, the guy's fallen in love with the dog. And the agent goes, oh no, you're presenting this offer in person, Brian. And now, I kid you not, I'm sitting outside that house. Never in my life, my palms are sweating. I feel like I'm going in to abduct a child, okay? I'm taking one of their kids. I might as well, can you throw in your spouse as a closing gift, okay? So this is a true story. So I sit down, I go through the offer, husband standing, sitting there, wife sitting there. I go through the offer and I go, my guy is a really nice man. He's really very nice. He's the most easygoing, loving guy. He's a professional surfer. He's totally chilled out. And I said, he wants nothing. He doesn't want your washer. He doesn't want your dryers. He doesn't want your fridge. He doesn't even want a home warranty. And I begged him to ask you guys for a home warranty. He wants nothing. But there's one unusual thing that I have to bring up. It's very important. I have to represent this offer. He wants your dog. What? He wants Boogie. And the wife goes, and the husband goes, well, let me see the rest of the offer. This is a true story. Never in my wildest dream. I'm going to tell you a fact, that he got that house and he got that dog. Apparently, the husband did not have a great relationship with the dog. Who knew? So the bottom line is you never quite know where someone's coming from. You never know what's important to them. You never know what you're going to be asked to do. But I do know, and I don't know legally, and now that I've told the story, maybe I'm going to jail for a small period of time, but I don't know if you're actually legally able to do that. But I know this, everything's up for grabs in a negotiation. Does that make sense? Yeah. Now, throughout this program, as we've covered, we want to encourage you with stories of people who've mastered these fundamentals, and they've become very successful. And we call this part Lessons from the Legends. Now, one such legend is Aaron West, and his example of negotiation that took place is one that took place with himself. You know, years ago when the recession hit, Aaron's marketplace was considered ground zero for foreclosures. Now, Aaron actually decided to sell his home so he could keep his coach with Buffini Company, which I would have considered crazy. But his investment in himself paid dividends. Over the past 5 years, Aaron West has sold over $100 million worth of real estate, and now he's able to buy all the real estate he wants when he wants. Sometimes the greatest negotiations you'll win are with yourself. Let's have a look.
We had purchased our dream house with the school down the street, and just everything was perfect. But with that came a price. And when I made the transition to real estate and then the market started to turn a little bit, it was a place where I was able to make that hit, is what I called it, every month, you know, the monthly expenses, but I wasn't able to get ahead. And so in 2007, end of 2006, 2007, I decided that it was time for me to hire an assistant. So I hired an assistant and had to make some tough decisions with what we were going to do financially moving forward, if we were going to stay in real estate and really build a business. And so over the course of a couple of months, I had a bunch of conversations with my coach, with some of my other mentors, a lot of conversations with my wife, and it was the hardest decision I've ever made. But I think with every really hard decision, there's growth from that. And we decided to sell our house so that we would be able to move forward and build a business versus just surviving.
Here are your action steps for Module 5. Number 1, we're going to call all clients under contract and use the winning words as appropriate. Number 2, each day, make 5 calls to your database using either the Mayor campaign dialogue to qualify them or the Big 3 dialogue to check in. Number 3, each day write 3 personal notes to people you've talked with. Number 4, we're going to do 7 pop buys this week. Now, I know I mentioned scheduling time for each important activity, but let's be real. Sometimes the day gets away from you. So my encouragement is, fit these in as you go. Have pop-by items and tags in the trunk of your car. Bring a pack of notes with you to write a few while you're waiting for the home inspector. You get the idea. And as always, number 5, track your activities and results in Referral Maker CRM. We have a great resource for you in Module 5. We've got the winning words for you to print out and keep in your workspace. And I also want you to be sure to practice the listing presentation role play with a partner several times this week until you feel comfortable. If you follow out the steps we've laid out for you and utilize your winning words along the way, I know you're going to have a great week.